What's up, everybody? Welcome back. Today, we're going to be responding to an interview UFC President Dana White gave to Fox News last week. He was promoting UFC 258, which happened over the weekend at Madison Square Garden. I did watch it. It was spectacular, but this interview was not. So let's take a look at the political BS he's spouting and respond with the facts.
First of all, since we came back and started doing full crowds, every event we've done has been a sellout, including Madison Square Garden. So, going through the pandemic the way that we did, finding solutions to problems, instead of hiding, was the best thing that we've ever done. I mean, our business grew exponentially through the pandemic.
So it's no secret that multinational corporations benefited from COVID-19. All of the data shows this. Small businesses got clobbered and big businesses were able to grow and thrive. So I would argue this isn't something individual to the UFC. It's just part of the overall circumstance that large businesses like that were in. And billionaires themselves, for example, their personal wealth grew by over 70% during the pandemic, during the last year and a half, 70%. And I don't believe Dana White is a billionaire, but he is a hundreds of millions heir. So, I don't think that's something individual to the UFC or because of their response in particular.
You think you sent a message to the country by saying we're going back, we're not going to hide, we're going to lean forward?
I hope so. I mean, I hope that's what happened. But my intention was to take care of my people. Through the pandemic, we didn't lay off one person. We didn't cut anybody's salaries. Everybody got their full bonuses that year, and all my fighters' contracts were kept.
Okay, so. Again, it's great that the UFC didn't lay anybody off, didn't cut their salaries. A lot of companies, big and small, were in this position or did this. And especially if it's not something that they actually had to do, which, again, a lot of large companies saw their revenues and their profits explode. It's really shitty to put people in that position and just take advantage of the political moment and I think the economic curtain that the pandemic created. This narrative of people running and hiding, like, dude, this was a global pandemic. This was a deadly virus. Yes, when there's a deadly virus that people are confronting, the natural instinct is to go away from it, to remove yourself from the risk. That's just human instinct. That's what is the smart thing to do. The smart thing isn't to put yourself right in the line of exposure. And I think trying to make it look like cowardice it's not only immature and silly, I think it's actually dangerous because the implication is that people who took the pandemic seriously are somehow cowardly and don't have the balls to face something down and take it on. That they're the ones who deserve the praise because they decided to put themselves at risk. And by the way, I think it's cowardly to force your employees to put themselves at risk from a deadly virus and to put themselves in the line of fire, because although they didn't lay anybody off, you were forced to basically be in environments in which you would be potentially exposed to COVID-19. Having to choose between having your job and potentially contracting a deadly virus, that's not a great decision to have to make. And if you're not offering, quite frankly, people the opportunity to get unemployment and they actually have to choose between a paycheck and potentially their lives, that's not a choice. A lot of businesses laid people off so that they wouldn't have to put themselves at risk and expose themselves in that way. If you're not giving people that kind of freedom to choose, do I want to work in an environment that could expose me? Because if you're not getting unemployment, it's going to be a lot harder to actually then find another job, since you'd have to dip into personal savings in order to like keep paying your bills. Then there's not that much of a choice there. That's like a false choice. And that entire narrative just pisses me off to no end.
You're in a city that told a bunch of firefighters get vaccinated or go home. Firefighters, cops, sanitation workers. What about that vaccine or drop dead attitude?
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Well, I'm not having my fighters can get vaccinated or not. We're not forcing people to get vaccinated. I believe as an American, that's your choice. If you want to get vaccinated, it's your body. This is a free country. You do what you want.
It is your choice if you want to get vaccinated or not. I think everybody can agree with that. It's just that there needs to be social consequences and cultural consequences for not doing so, because not doing so potentially puts everybody else at risk and prolongs this pandemic unnecessarily when we have effective vaccinations. So I am all in favor of employer mandates. I think especially like they just talked about the first responders in New York, when you're talking about people taking care of you in a hospital, when you're talking about firefighters and cops and people like you as a citizen might be coming into contact with through no choice or fault of your own. That's not always true, but I think it's important that they're not exposing citizens, that they're not putting other people at risk who may not be able to make that decision of exposure, and especially when you're talking about healthcare settings. Employer mandates vaccination. Usually there's another option of getting tested, which I did not hear him talk about. So I'm guessing the UFC doesn't have a testing policy for its employees who are not vaccinated. The Biden administration's policy on this is basically if you're not vaccinated, you have to get tested at least once a week. A lot of employers have upped that to like twice a week. Some places it's even daily. There are a few exceptions, like with the healthcare workers and people like that don't have a choice to get tested daily. But again, that's because of the danger that they could pose to society because of that. But most places have a testing option.
Looking out today in this city, I guess people have to be vaccinated to go to the match?
Right. If you're vaccinated and you want to come to the event, you come to the event in New York. If you're not, I'm going to be putting on 44 other events around the country. You can go to one of those shows.
People did have to be vaccinated to go to the event at MSG because of New York City's vaccination policy. So that was basically something they had to comply with, and I think is a good thing, or they were not happy to comply.
You mentioned just what happened on Tuesday in this country, and people have stood up and taken notice. What do you mean?
Yeah, well, I think you see the tide starting to turn now. I even see some, people who are on the crazy liberal side now starting to go, whoa, what are we doing here? I think everybody's starting to notice that things aren't working. Things aren't the way they used to be. I think people just want some normalcy again. You're seeing it in Virginia.
The reason we can't have normalcy again, by and large, is because of unvaccinated people. So it's not because of the vaccinated. The virus continues to live on because of the unvaccinated. So the best thing to do if we want to return to normalcy is get vaccinated. However, I do actually share some sentiment of agreement, and that comes with masking. I do believe that you should not have to wear a mask in any situation if you don't want to, if you're fully immunized, if you are fully vaccinated. I feel like if you've gone to that length to protect yourself, to protect the public, you shouldn't have to wear a mask. And I know people were talking about breakthrough cases for a while. They weren't tracking them at the CDC, so we didn't know a lot about it. With Delta, it became more of a concern. But overall, of fully vaccinated New Yorkers, only 1% have had a breakthrough case. So you can kind of see the direction of the risk there. And I believe that's such a negligible risk that individual rights do trump public health in that case when it comes to masking for fully vaccinated people. And I don't believe businesses should have the right to force people to wear a mask if they're fully immunized. Not a position I've really heard a lot, but it is something that I do believe.
The other thing to keep in mind, I think too, that is actually resonating is American spirit, cradle to grave, taking care of you. We're going to give you free preschool. We're going to give you free lunches. We're going to give you free community college. We're going to give you free health care. Can we have capitalism?
You know, free community college, free school lunches, those are just such big handouts. We're going to triple the national debt if we give kids free school lunches, right? Like, it's just so silly. We're talking about such basic, small ticket items here. We're talking about education, kids having food and nutrition, and healthcare. So, like, people being alive and healthy. Like, these are basic, fundamental human rights. The idea that these are just handouts that the government is giving you and it's going to turn our country into communist Cuba or whatever is just, it's just preposterous. It just doesn't even make sense, guys. Like, we're talking about school lunches for kids. We're talking about community college. We're not even talking about four-year institutions. We're talking about community college. And everybody benefits in society if people are educated, if people are fed, if people can take care of their health. Everybody benefits, and it costs society less to actually just implement these programs versus just letting people suffer and then pay the price later in terms of malnourishment, in terms of addiction, in terms of a lack of education, and then kind of being forced in a position where you might be reliant on a not very steady job that doesn't pay you enough, and so you have to be on welfare or other social programs in order to just survive. Like, these things cost us more, like actual dollars, than if we just actually gave people basic rights. It's honestly infuriating, the mentality that they don't want to give kids school lunches because it's a government handout. Clearly, they don't care about actual people here. They care about wealthy special interests only.
And this other stuff free, because nothing's really free, especially when you're running a $28 trillion debt.
There's no such thing as free. There's no such thing as free. And you should know by now, the government is never going to take care of you, ever. You need to take care of yourself. You need to get out there. Like you just said, there's 11 million jobs out there. Get out there and take care of yourself. The government's never going to do it.
Right.
They're referring to Build Back Better in this case, subtly. And all of the facts and assumptions here are just incorrect. Build Back Better now is only a $1.75 trillion bill over the course of 10 years, mind you. So that's $1.75 billion per year. And it's all paid for. It's not going to add to the national deficit one penny. Not one penny. I'm going to leave a link in the description that basically explains the way that the framework is funded. Most of it comes from closing corporate tax loopholes, but it's all paid for. It's not going to add a penny to the deficit, which I don't really think is important anyway. I think that's something Republicans like to pull out when we're talking about actual tangible policy that can improve people's lives. But then when President Trump wants to cut taxes to such a degree that we increase the national deficit by $8 trillion, they don't bat an eye. So it's just factually inaccurate. The government actually is the people. It's by the people for the people when it's actually done correctly. When it's actually functioning, the government is the people. The people make up the government. Government actually has the ability to improve your life and to help take care of you in times of need. That is the entire idea behind social welfare, is taking care of people. And then by taking care of people, that actually gives you more ability to go out and have personal freedom, to make your own choices, to start businesses, to get an education, to do a plethora of different things. But if you don't have your basic needs met, you can't really do jack shit. And this earlier point that I forgot to mention, when they're like, can we have capitalism? Like, having people be able to meet their basic needs and the government actually functioning and not just serving multinational corporations and wealthy special interests. Capitalism doesn't involve just like complete dysregulation and zero government oversight. It can, but that's not really functional capitalism. And we know from history that that doesn't really work. Like, we've always had sort of a mixed system. And when we have that balance and achieve that equilibrium, things work really well. I mean, our country functioned the best when we basically had a social democracy in the 1930s and 40s under FDR. So, and that's when, by the way, corporate taxes were as high as 95%.
And that's what I wasn't waiting for through the pandemic. I wasn't going to sit around and wait for the government to take care of me or my people.
Where'd that come from? Where'd that attitude come from?
I'm an American. That's how I grew up. That's how we grew up here. We don't hide from things. We take things head on.
Yeah, because that's what we were doing. We were sitting around during the pandemic. There wasn't a deadly virus out there that could kill us or our loved ones at any time. That's not what was going on, right? No, we just chose to sit around at home and twiddle our thumbs and play video games and watch porn because we're lazy and we're entitled and we don't want to work, right? That's what was really going on here. It's just such bullshit. It's such bullshit rhetoric. It's like, how do you even give a composed response to that? Of course, people didn't work. First of all, many of the people who left their jobs or lost their jobs were women, and many of those women had to basically take care of their children while they were doing Zoom school, and also try to like run their households and work. Like, that wasn't going to work. And then also, because of just the economic conditions, the lack of jobs paying a living wage or treating their employees like actual people with basic dignity and respect, it's resulted in what they're calling a labor shortage. But it's really not a shortage of labor. It's a shortage of jobs paying a living wage. It's a shortage of respectable jobs. That's what there's a shortage of here. I just find that actually offensive that Dana White is going to say people are sitting around at home, they're lazy, they're entitled, they just don't want to work, and that's what's the problem. So you just got to go out there, you got to get one of these horrible jobs that is going to pay you a poverty wage and just suck it up, buttercup. Like, go fuck yourself, honestly. So that is all I have to say. I hope this was like enjoyable on some level. It was a little longer than intended, but I think all relevant points. And I'll see you later. Maybe to talk about the passage of Biff.